Good morning and welcome to the Daily Grind here on Latte from Sunday, the 29th of June. And a nice warm day in London. Very, very warm. And there's been a lot to talk about as well, because apparently RB Leipzig have reduced their asking price for Benjamin Šeško. Gabriel Martinelli might be off to Saudi Arabia. We've got some unpopular transfer additions from Tom, which is going to throw you guys off your chairs. And the squad is taking shape quite nicely, contrary to popular belief. So we're going to talk about all of that stuff. Get involved in the chat, like the video, subscribe if you're new, and all that sort of stuff. And I'm delighted to be joined by my good friend Tom Canton of the Gooner Talk TV. Tom, welcome to the firm. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, mate. Hot, as you say. Yeah, very hot.
Warm. It's very warm.
Not bad. How are you?
I'm good. Are you coping with the sleep?
Not majorly, no. It's just so warm. As I was saying to you off air, we bought a new fan, which is like designed to kind of like not just blow hot air around the room, but try and cool the air as well. So it's pretty good, but it's just air being blown in your face at the end of the day. So you're making sacrifices, whatever happens.
All right, well, listen, thank you for joining me. Really appreciate it. And I'm loving the new studio setup, by the way. The new ambient lighting I've seen on a couple of your last shows, the redness in the background. Really, really good stuff. You've had a holiday. You've just been and gone away with the missus. You haven't missed much.
Yeah, I timed it pretty darn well.
You have. I mean, you came back and like the dominoes started falling.
I remember saying before I went away, like, I'll do some content when I'm out there if something happens. Didn't do any content. Nothing happened. So it was fine.
Sorry, that was just Dyson falling from the wall onto the floor. Don't know if you guys heard that. Not the fan, sadly, just the Hoover. No, I'm really glad you had a holiday because you've been making content for some time now, and it is a relentless task. Maybe we'll talk about that towards the end. But like, to have a break and now you've come back and you've timed it to perfection because over the last sort of 36 hours, we've had some movement, 48 hours maybe, we've had some movement with regard to the Arsenal squad. We're going to talk about that. But the first place that I want to start, Tom, is news that Benjamin Sesko, according to Bild, now has a less expensive asking price. What did you make of this story?
Yeah, so I think this story is a great example of, an aggregation in general and news, we do it to a degree because we talk about the news that's kind of reported around and talk about, who's reported it and so on and so forth. And the reality is that this is a great example of where aggregation has kind of misinterpreted a story in Bild. So there's two types of stories there's lots of different types of stories, but in essence, there's two. You have news stories and you have opinion pieces. And so this was an opinion piece in Bild. It was a piece effectively which described how the information from the German publication was that it's most likely that a deal can be agreed with Leipzig closer to around 70 million euros rather than the 80 to 100 million euros that they're initially asking for. So, yeah, they haven't reduced their asking price, and that's why I'm glad you put it in quotation marks at the top of the slide there, because that all the piece was from Bild was basically suggesting that the likelihood is that a negotiation will lead to an agreement whereby it's slightly lower than the asking price of what they have, which is, what happens in most cases, barring when a club demand a release clause of a player. So, yeah, I think it's a great example of how we can get kind of whipped up into transfer chaos and the mess and the soup that is the transfer window and see stories that are saying apparently one thing, get interpreted one way, but in reality are actually another.
I'm going to name drop because it's not often that we get such plugs, but I had Sami Mokbel on the show 3-4 days ago, and he talked about how the Christian Norgard deal broke, but we also talked about the the behaviors of Andrea Berta and how they're different they are to Edu, and how he's sort of keeping lots of different options open as and when Arsenal need to press a button, they will do that. What do you make of his, I guess, first few months here? This is his first proper window with the club. Are you hearing things? You're close to the club. Are you excited? Are you encouraged by what's coming out?
Yeah, what you said, Sammy reported there. I remember doing a story just as the season finished, basically around the idea that, Arsenal fans, you can expect a lot of links to different players this summer. Now, I know that we always get linked to a lot of different players every summer, but in particular, it's more to do with that approach from Andrea Berta that he likes to have this holistic look at different targets, that he knows the priorities that Arsenal have and the different positions that we want. We know we wanted a defensive midfielder, but that was obviously already pretty much wrapped up with his arrival anyway with Zubimendi. had or were Partey to leave, which we now know is going to be the case, they would need to bring in a replacement. So the fact that that happened so quickly, I think, is obviously telling into the fact that there would have been, again, discussions around the idea if Partey was to leave. We're going to draw up a list of potential targets that we can move for. Christian Norgard and Lucien Agume was the other one that were kind of at the top of that list. And Arteta's preference was for Christian Norgard for his Premier League experience. And of course, with losing Partey and Jorginho and 2 30-plus players, Norgard actually becomes the oldest player, and he's only 31 in the Arsenal team were he to join. So, yeah. And then obviously the striker situation, we know the preference is Sesko. We know Gyökeres is another player that the club very much appreciate as well and have liked well beyond, Andrea Berta's role. I know that David Ornstein did the story that when Berta was coming in, that he had a real liking towards Gyökeres. But that interest from Arsenal without Berta has existed in Gyökeres way before that as well. Ahead of that 2024 summer window, there were, certainly was, I think we reported on FL that he was a player on a list of potential centre-forward targets, but Sesko, again, that summer was the player that they mainly targeted until he decided to stay at Leipzig for another season. So I've been very impressed with Berta. I think that, this way of approaching deals means that we can now get these deals done quicker. The bigger, more complicated, more expensive deals, yes, will run into July. And July in general is a month where things start to accelerate anyway because of the different accounting periods of different clubs and for financial fair play and profit and sustainability reasons. So, yeah, very impressed with Berta, and it's positive signs at the outset.
Yeah, and if you guys want to read more about our transfer activity, Tom did a great piece about the genius move that allows us to spend a little bit more later this summer, which is hopefully the plan. Andy Love says, Tom gave instructions to Arsenal, no transfers to be announced whilst I'm away in Canada, and it has worked so far. Cardi, by the way, just on the squad building, which we'll come on to in a couple of slides' time, says, good business so far, but unfortunately some fans will moan about everything because that's what gets the engagement rather than giving genuine opinion nowadays. Just on opinion, Tom, before we talk about other things, we have been linked, as you say, with Victor Gyökeres and Ben Sesko from a personal perspective, not necessarily what the club might do, what Arteta might do. From a personal perspective of the two players, who would your preferred striker be?
Oh, I do like both. And I think that if we were to sign either, both of them would bring, a lot to that position. I personally lean towards Šeško of the two. I think that the level of investment that we're looking into a centre-forward, I just think that the risk is far greater, with maybe not far greater, but considerably greater with Gyökeres compared to Šeško. His numbers in terms of Šeško's finishing are really good. He outperforms his XG excellently. Not the season just gone. He slightly outperformed it the season before that when we were first interested in him. He really outperformed his XG. It was very impressive. And I think, that aerial threat that he has links him with Arsenal. Gyökeres doesn't tend to be as dominant aerially as opposed to Slovenia. And I think that's a trait that Arteta obviously really likes in players. He's got pace, he's got power, he's got technical ability to his game as well. That leap that you can see on the screen there, that is obviously that aesthetic, athletic nature that he has is obviously very desirable for Arsenal as well. And I think obviously still got a lot of room to grow. Yes, you could argue that the more immediate impact would come from Gyökeres, but I still think that Šeško would add that immediate impact for Arsenal next season. And one of the examples I used that kind of gives context to kind of the wacky numbers that Gyökeres has put up, goals-wise, and yes, there's a lot of penalties in there, but he scored 18 non-penalty goals in his final season with Coventry. That only went up by 6 to 24 non-penalty goals in his first season with Sporting, despite obviously all the crazy numbers we associate with him. And then last season, that went up to 27 non-penalty goals for obviously the club in Portugal that has dominated for the last 2 seasons in a league that, if we're being honest but respectful to that league, the Championship, whereas with Coventry, the majority of those teams in the Championship beat the majority of teams in the Portuguese league. That is just the reality of that scenario. So while he's playing at a high level in the Champions League where he has delivered, which is a good example of why I still think that he would offer something to us, I think that people kind of get and fall in love with the volume of goals he scored, but ignored the context a little bit of where they've come from.
It's always interesting to get different insight on people's opinions on these two strikers. I mean, I've done a full sort of U-turn. I wanted Gyökeres at the start, the speed, the power that you talk about. The goal ratio, look, that's the shortcoming of stats, right? They don't sort of weight things like what club you're at, what playing style you've got, what league you play in. And he's a goal machine. And actually, I liked what he did when we played him against the Champions. When we played against Sporting in the Champions League, I thought he was a real handful. Sesko, on the other hand, hasn't quite got the prolific goal scorer in him, but I love the physical attributes. I love the fact that he's 6'5". He's great in the air, ball striking. He's played in Bundesliga, which is obviously great. He's much younger. There's a bit of a project there, a bit of development time. I mean, look, I've described it before, Tom. You know, while you were away on holiday, we've been starving for weeks, and we're stood at the front of a buffet line, deliberating over chicken or beef. You know, just eat, just feast. For goodness sake, one of these guys would do it. Go on.
There's a really telling point. That comment from Gunnar73 says definitely seems like the people that actually know football are mainly saying Sesko. This isn't like a blow your own trumpet type of thing, but whenever I'm in the press room and talking to kind of, colleagues of mine, other journalists that are in the game and cover, analytics of football, but a lot of different publications, the general consensus, the vast majority of people I speak to in the business believe that Šeško is the better option for Arsenal. And I think that is important to point out.
Victor says Šeško bomber tomorrow. Well, there's a fingers crossed for you right there. And Wonton Soup, I love these usernames. Saw Sesko kicking a basketball net. He is truly a physical specimen. Let's talk about Gabby Martinelli, Tom, because he's a sort of favorite of mine. I did a video maybe a few days ago about potentially him going to Bayern Munich, but now the Middle East are interested. Saudi. Talk about your thoughts on this potential move.
Yeah, this is reported by Ben Jacobs, who, from my knowledge of doing a little bit of work with Ben, has good contacts in the Middle East regarding football. I remember doing a few pieces with him back in the day about, the rise of Saudi football because of his links there and covering, football out there and sport out there in general. So if Ben's saying that these are indeed interest from Al Nassr in particular, I haven't got much reason to doubt those links. Whether Arsenal let Martinelli go is obviously another question. I think they would only let him leave if they really were tempted by kind of a silly offer. And if you aren't going to get a silly offer, Saudi's probably a good place to, expect that from. It is obviously the priority of Al Nassr to look at Luis Diaz of Liverpool first. He's kind of their number one target. They've got other alternatives as well, not just Martinelli. For me, I kind of want to see Arsenal add this window, not replace. I think it's important that we don't go one for one. If we bring in a Rodrigo or an Eze, I don't want to see a player leaving. I want to keep both Martinelli and Trossard and add to that for next season, because I think that's going to be really, really important for Arsenal's ability to compete across several competitions. We know how injuries can really kick us in the backside. We saw that last season. We saw that the season before last season as well. And we know that we need to keep our best talent. And Martinelli, I think, if you are going to sell him and you're going to get a silly offer, I think if you got 60 million or more for him coming in, that's difficult to turn down, I think. But I'd be surprised if that came in, for Martinelli during this window. And if it does, it means Arsenal have got double the amount of work to do, because they would need to bring, in my view, another forward then on top of the 2 or 3 that they already want this window.
Look, people have already made their minds up on whether they think Gabby Martinelli is good enough for Arsenal or not. There are a lot of people that will say, look, sell him, doesn't matter, I've not seen enough from him over the last 2-3 years. And then there are people like me who are like, well, actually, he's still a young boy. He's still got time, and he's got a sort of role to play in this squad. But your point is the most salient point, Tom, which is I am so tired now of Arsenal falling short and not having a deep enough squad with options on the bench. Towards the back end of last season, and I've said it a few times on recent shows, so apologies for the loyal viewers for repeating this, but, towards the back end of the season, we were chasing games, we were desperately trying to do something in games, and you look to the bench and we had 2 goalkeepers, 3 left backs, a couple of youth academy products, and a Raheem Sterling. And it was spirit sapping. Like, you sat there and you're feeling sympathetic towards Arteta, but then at the same time, you're like, well, you're responsible for this because you're the coach and you should have bought some players in January. You should have done some stuff last summer. So you're absolutely spot on, mate. Whether Trossard and Martinelli are ever going to reach the levels that I want them to reach, they're really good options to have on the bench if we can get that sort of, star left wide forward, star centre forward. They're the options that you want. And it's good for protection of the players to be able to rotate properly. That's something that Mikel Arteta hasn't really done during his time at Arsenal. He's got his favourites, he's got his regulars, he's played players into the ground, and we suffered massively last year with all those soft tissue injuries. So that is one to watch. Just on the Saudi side, John Duran is apparently looking for a way out, going to go to Fenerbahce. I mean, it's not quite working, that project, who'd have thought, but what did you make of that? I mean, he only went there last year for a lot of money, and now he could be going to Fenerbahce.
Yeah, I put a tweet about this yesterday morning, because obviously Gabri Veiga as well, another player that went out to Saudi from Spain, has now come back to Europe playing for Porto. Was very highly rated when he was in Spain, I think with Celta Vigo, if my memory serves me right. And I think this is it's somewhat of an indictment, I think, of kind of the Saudi situation and what they're trying to do, because initially, obviously, to raise the profile of the league, they've gone and got your Ronaldos, your Sadio Mane's, your Roberto Firminos, etc., and so on, to a much higher extent than we've seen the MLS or the Chinese league in the past do so. You know, there was really like this big push, more so than we'd ever seen before, from a league outside of Europe to try and raise the profile of not just the league, but the nation as well in terms of its sport, with the World Cup, of course, coming up in the future. But the next step was always going to be, could they tempt some of the younger European players to make that switch to Saudi? And the answer is yes, they have been able to do that, because those players have moved. Ruben Neves is another example as well. You know, a player that's gone and taken the big money. But the danger was always in my mind back when these moves were happening, is that I absolutely thought they could tempt those young players with huge wages. But the reality is that they're paying them such high wages that those players know that they can go out there for 6 months, a year, 2 years, and that's it. Make the money that they need for the rest of their whole career pretty much, and be very, very comfortable, come back to Europe and play the next 8 to 10 years of their career out anyway. So that's exactly what John Duran is doing. I also think there's an element of personal life. You know, I think I saw a rumor when he first made that move out there that he was living outside of Saudi and then traveling into Saudi or something. That was, I don't know if that was verified, but that was a pretty crazy story, that he was commuting a huge distance, maybe even by plane, pretty much for even just training at times. So it might be that side of the kind of the outside of off the field stuff is also a reason as to why some players are not sticking around as well. But yeah, the move to Fenerbahce, though, is an interesting one. I know Jose Mourinho is obviously there, and that would be a big pull as well. But I'm very conscious and curious to see what fee they pay, because Aston Villa got a lot of money for Duran as well.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be interesting to see how that sort of unfolds. I'm surprised he's going to Turkey. I thought he'd maybe come straight back to the Premier League. He's a good enough player, I thought, but certainly with a good enough sort of talent. This has caught my eye. This is brilliant. This is why I love doing these shows. Whole Milk says Wonton Soup is an elite username, and then Wonton Soup comes back and goes, haha, whole milk is good taste.
Oh, this is weird to me, right? Because on my channel,
I saw, handles. What's all that?
Yeah, they have the handles, whereas yours have their YouTube names. I don't know why that is. I have not changed the settings. I need to have
StreamYard have been doing some really interesting things, and they've hiked up the price as well, which isn't great. By the way, hundreds of you watching live on YouTube, please do like the video, subscribe to the channel if you're new. If you've enjoyed these daily grinds, there are loads more to come. This week we've got Haroon Hickman, Pedro Vlegrove, Harry Simiu, trying to get Sam Dean on as well. So let me know if you're enjoying them. Do subscribe and all that sort of stuff if you're new. Let's talk about the squad growth. It is taking shape slowly, contrary to popular belief. These are the potential arrivals, Tom. Kepa, Mosquera, Zubamendi, and Christian Norgard. I must add, we've not actually signed anyone yet. We've not actually announced anyone yet, but these are the names. And then the graphic on the right-hand side, also courtesy of Now_Arsenal, shows you by position what we're sort of doing. And I guess the ultimate utopia for any sort of coach is to have 2 players per position, and it is taking shape. And obviously we've assumed there it's going to be either Rodrigo or Eze. I'm going to talk to you about that in a second. Let's go with Sesko, because given both of us want Sesko. You know, as unexciting as some of these transfers on the left-hand side might be, they are important roles that we had to fill. Yeah,
definitely. And I think, you know, Zubamendi himself, if we were, say, announcing a week ago for the first time that Arsenal were landing Martin Zubamendi, I think the euphoria around that deal would be, you know, exponentially larger than what it is now. It's just because we've known about that deal for so long. There's almost, I think Andrew on the Askcast used the word fatigue to describe how people are feeling about that deal, because we've just known about it for so long. I just can't really get my head around, you know, why there's such a pushback on some of these deals. Phil Costa was speaking on the Arsenal Vision podcast about Christian Norgard in particular. I thought it was a really good clip, just kind of explaining why he can't really get his head around it. He thought it was just people that are really against the idea of Norgard being the Jorginho replacement, just being a little obtuse. And I thought it was a good word to describe it, because he is a very, very solid addition to the team. You know, he's a player actually that I might be slightly biased, because I remember doing a show like 3 years ago on TGT listing midfielders I'd like to see at Arsenal, and Norgard was kind of my underrated pick of those.
Really?
Yeah, it's someone I've really have appreciated for a while at his work. And all you need to do, and Phil said this as well on the Vision, was that all you need to do is look at the reaction of the fans of the club that the player is leaving to get a good kind of idea about how what type of player you're getting. And the sense is that they're gutted. They're gutted that he's going, and there's a worry, and that's I think the more key word. There's a concern that Brentford are losing Norgard and Mbuemo, of course, in the same window we expect. Mosquera is obviously the long-term protection at centre-half if there's a nightmare scenario where Saliba or Gabriel was to be either out injured or even to leave in the case of Saliba in the future. You're already investing in a young, talented player. He's definitely still raw in certain aspects of his game, particularly kind of his touch and control, but he's still showing really high levels of potential, particularly defensively. He's very speedy. He's got that physical presence about him as well. So that's good. And then Kepa for 5 million quid. You're not going to get a goalkeeper as good as him. I know that there's memes around Kepa that have surrounded his career, have followed his career a long time. But for 5 million quid, a player that's played at the level that he's played at for as long as he has played at last season at Bournemouth, had a really good season for Bournemouth. I think he was 6th on the list of clean sheet keepers, and I think he missed a fair few games of the season as well because of injury, and obviously couldn't play against Chelsea, his parent club at the time either. So he could have been even higher up that clean sheet list as a keeper in the Premier League. So 5 million quid, that's just a no-brainer.
I do want to go against the grain on Christian Norgard just for a moment. And it's not just because you've said it, but like, I have to be honest, when this transfer story broke and the news sort of was shared, I was massively underwhelmed, Tom. I think that's maybe a combination of my sort of expectations going into summer. And I know you and I have talked about this on social just recently with Rohan Jivan, about, what my expectations were and the profile of player that I wanted. Like, I love the fact that he's covered all the ground. I love the fact that he's a club captain, that he's pretty experienced in the Premier League, and, that he's a bit of the dark arts about him. But he's not the player that I would have had in mind, and it actually sort of surprised me. But at the same time, I'm not going to get upset about it because I think these players have a role in the squad. And I think when you think about Jorginho and Elneny as our 2 recent departures from that defensive midfield position beyond Partey, this is the upgrade on that. This is the floor of the midfield selection. I hear your point about Phil saying that, actually you've got to judge the reaction of the fans when they lose a player. I mean, you could go to Rochdale and sign their captain and Rochdale fans. No, but do you see what I mean? Like,
I know what you mean.
Rochdale fans are going to be really upset that, we've lost our
course.
skipper. Doesn't mean he's going to be good or great for Arsenal. Now, look, I don't want to knock it, but I'm just sort of saying it as it is. Like, he was not in my top 5, 10 choices. I think there's a lot of reason to be content with it because it's a sensible move. It's a really sensible sort of signing, but it's not one that I think is going to move the needle for us. But like I say, goes back to the point I made just on the previous slide. This is about having options on the bench to be able to give certain players a bit of a rest. Declan Rice is not going to be able to play every minute of every game. He's been doing that for the last 2-3 years. He cannot do it. At some point, he's going to need to sit down and just take a couple of weeks. Do you know what I mean? So, it's very sensible. And financially, 9 million quid. He's on £40,000 a week at Brentford, but probably going to double that, maybe even get to 6 figures. That's okay. And we're releasing a lot of money from the Thomas Partey deal. But I don't want to, and I'm not saying that you have, but I don't want to sort of sit here and, it's a great signing, it's okay. It's sensible. It's not enough. Good business. Not enough to get angry about. I don't get why people get angry about stuff like this, but like, it's okay. It's not a problem. That's how I see it. In terms of the squad, I've got there Rodrigo and Eze. Who's your preference for that sort of wide left position?
Rodrigo certainly, I think, would be an astonishing piece of business for Arsenal if they can get that deal done. It's one that I think, if happens, will move towards the end of the window. I think it's one that will go on. I know the fans don't like when that happens, but the reality is, like with the Mesut Ozil deal in 2013, sometimes the big players only become available at certain points of a transfer window. Some would say that we can't afford in this window to take that risk, and I hear that argument. But the alternatives, at left wing, they're not necessarily real game changers for Arsenal. People suggest players like Rafael Leao. I like his ability, but his consistency is not good enough for me. I think he blows hot and cold a lot, and we need that consistent delivery of goals and assists and contributions. Nico Williams obviously was the other one linked prior to what looks to be his move to Barcelona. Again, I like Nico Williams a lot. How much of an upgrade he really is on what we already have, I'm not really sure. But Rodrigo, that's the type of deal that you do that's a statement signing, that that catches the attention of like a Florian Wirtz deal for Liverpool, for example. It catches the attention of the market. It's a statement deal. Eze, though, on the other hand, is another player who I really like. And while he's not as like kind of the exuberance of a Rodrigo type deal from Real Madrid, I do think that Eze is one of the deals that a Premier League champion makes. I really feel that he's the type of player that you sign if you're a Premier League title winner. He could comfortably be signed by Manchester City, if they didn't have to spread themselves thinner across financially and went for Cherky, obviously, instead this summer, and went for a younger option as well. But he's turning 27, still a very good age in terms of where we're moving. Got many, many years in him at the top level. So that's kind of where I'm at. And if Arsenal can do some mad business in terms of sales, Fabio Vieira, Reece Nelson, Zinchenko, maybe one of Martinelli or Trossard does go, Kivior, obviously his future's not necessarily completely assured, then who knows? Maybe it's not beyond Arsenal that both could be a reality, but that would be a big stretch.
Still a lot of work to do. By the way, Paul says, the club can do no wrong in both your eyes. Every signing is sensible and good according to you. It's incredible. Paul, I don't know if you've been asleep during the show. I've just talked about, honestly, I've just criticised Mikel Arteta for not rotating. I've just criticised Arsenal for not having enough squad depth. I've just been, I think, fair on the arrival of Christian Norgard. What else do you want me to say?
Yeah, I sat in January and complained that we were going for Ollie Watkins, but that wasn't good enough, people. You are always positive about Arsenal. I was like, if we'd have done Ollie Watkins, I would have lost it. So
there you go. You mentioned Manchester City and made me sort of, not feel so good, but this made me sick. I've not been watching the Club World Cup at all, but have you seen this, Tom? Did you see Manchester City tweeting pictures of Papa with Pep? I mean, what's going on here? What is going on here?
I mean, what can you say, really? I mean, it's not great to see, but the adult in me takes a step back and like, wow, they're just mates.
Have you watched any of it? Have you watched any of the Club World Cup?
No, I haven't watched a single minute of it.
Is that because you refuse to do so, or you've been on holiday and just can't be bothered, or is it just not interesting you at all?
I genuinely don't tend to watch too much football outside of Arsenal, in general these days, because my work is so Arsenal all the time, 9 to 5, writing, talking Arsenal, 8 a.m. talking Arsenal, evenings talking Arsenal. These guys called Latte Firm keep asking me on the show talking Arsenal, and when it's like so much, I'd want to kind of take a step back and stay away from, and especially at the end of the season. The season's over. I'm like, let the season be over, have the break. So it's not a principle thing. It's just if I had principles, I wouldn't have watched the Qatar World Cup. There would, but I still watched that. So it's not to do with that. I love football, but it's a no.
No, I've not watched a second of it, not watched any of the highlights, though I will say James Alcott's been doing a great job on DAZN in terms of the clips that I've been seeing with Lias and Julien Laurent. Hand of Arsenal is in the house, says, get your grubby hands off him. TJ says, get your hands off him, Pep. I mean, look, just for the record, I've had the pleasure of meeting Arsene Wenger a few times, and I know you have as well. If I were to ever see him in the street, that's probably how I'd embrace him. Look how happy Pep is.
It's how I nearly embraced him when I did meet him. So
look how happy he is. Raz Al Cool says, this is an image I will never unsee. I know it's really terrible. And by the way, Jurgen Klopp yesterday and Sky have gone quite aggressive on Jurgen's words about this being a total waste of time. It's killing football, this, that, and the other. Even he's come out and said that it's something that he's not happy with. And one of the clubs that he reps is actually taking part. So that's really interesting. Right, Tom, let's wrap it up. Let's talk about your unpopular signing, Arsenal edition. Now, before you reveal the name of the player, and I will say, I did for me, it was Garnacho. We've had shouts for Paul Pogba, Marcus Rashford. My personal is Alejandro Garnacho. We've had Harry Kane. So I wanted to get your thoughts, but before you sort of reveal the name of the player, could you tell us why this position and why that profile? And then I'll bring him up on screen.
Yeah, I'll say that I felt like I nearly went with Sesko because I feel like there's such like a divide, on the striker side that he's almost unpopular for some to pick Sesko. But no, I went for this player because a number of reasons why I think he'd be unpopular. And for the record, there are a number of players that I would want ahead of him, for sure. But the wide right position is an area where I think that, we really did lack depth when Bukayo Saka was missing. If we are in for a wide player, I want it to be, a left-sided player by priority, hence Rodrigo, that's centre forward. And so once you've bought, hypothetically, a Sesko or Gyökeres and a Rodrigo, the amount of money you're going to have left, it's not going to be enough to go for your wondrous players. And the main reason why it's probably unpopular is because he's a Chelsea player. So already, like, there's that Chelsea reject, another Chelsea player.
And his name is?
Nodi Madueke.
Okay.
Like,
listen, even
this is
before
really
you said
hard
this,
to do because
there were lots of people. This was
Yeah.
Raz Al Kul said this earlier, like well earlier in the show. Happy with the business so far, but please, no Madueke. And then you've got Toby Madueke next year as our winger. Can't wait. Now, I don't know if that's a sarcastic fire emoji, but yeah, the viewers have turned off. What are your why Noni? Come on. I mean, on a serious note, you have talked about the sort of depth out wide, but
yeah,
he does rile Arsenal fans' feathers.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, and I don't know. It's been a while since we've kind of had players that necessarily don't. That it's not actually a while. We've got a few of them that wind people up, but in particular, the Arsenal fans haven't liked. I remember Diego Costa obviously was kind of the king of that. But there's a lot of context to this. Like, he's not anywhere near the top of my list. So when you're trying to think of an unpopular signing, the reality is the players that I want, Arsenal look like they're going for, which makes it kind of difficult. But yeah, Madueke, there's just something about him that I think that there is. Like, I don't like that he's at Chelsea. I don't like that he went to Chelsea because I wanted him to go somewhere else, like a Brighton or a Brentford or somewhere that, you know, he could really develop and shine. Because at PSV, I really liked what I was seeing, and I really think there is a real talent there. It's clear Thomas Tuchel sees it because he keeps on choosing him to start for England, obviously, as well, which I have a lot of respect for. I don't like the fact he's at Chelsea. Obviously, he already gets the Chelsea tagline if he ever gets linked with Arsenal. Like, I saw those links to Nicholas Jackson, which did make my heart sink when I saw those. There is just something in him. Like, when you look at his numbers as well, they're quite impressive. Like, his non-penalty goals for his position. He's in the 99th percentile for progressive carries. Like, he really is good at taking players on and bringing the ball forwards into dangerous areas. So I think he's wasted at Chelsea, and I think there is a talent there. But again, the context is big. There's a lot of players I'd rather have, but this is our unpopular signing.
Yeah, I forced you into doing it. Listen, I set the internet on fire when I suggested Alejandro Garnacho. People are sleeping on him. So there's your choice, ladies and gents, boys and girls. It's either Garnacho or Madueke. Make your choice now. No, listen, it's the transfer window has been quiet for us. It's kind of simmered over the last few days. So this is just a bit of harmless fun. And I appreciate you for taking part, Tom. Really, really appreciate that. I think that's where we want to sort of wrap it up.
Yeah, I did want to say, like, because obviously, thank you for inviting me on, as always. Absolute pleasure. But your tweet the other day I came across as well. I think it was on Latte Firm, wasn't it? You posted a tweet and you said that you kind of felt somewhat fatigued and were in a place. Yeah. I remember also before I went on holiday, like, feeling very much like I was almost anxious about taking a break because of the control obsessive nature that I have anyway of moving away from a channel, and is anybody going to be there when I get back as well, was always an anxiety level. But just that Arsenal is, and football in general is so, and content creation around it's so demanding and challenging, and also, you, as we've seen with a comment in the chat box, you know, people misinterpret you and label you with things and criticize you things. So I just want to ask a simple question: are you all right?
Yeah, I am. Yeah, I am. So the message that you're referring to is about a year, 14 months ago. I just felt this sort of lack of confidence when it came to creating content. Like, I love making content. The community that I've built has been absolutely extraordinary, and there are so many wonderful people that I've had the pleasure of meeting and sort of engaging with over this sort of Latte Firm journey. And this is, you know, we've finished 3 years now on this channel. But I was mentally drained, and it was nothing to do with Arsenal because we were doing really well. Like, so you'd think at a time when Arsenal are doing well, it's easy to get, you know, create content. You know much better than I do how much effort goes into scheduling shows, scheduling guests, preparing slide decks. Doing the actual show is not easy. I've just had Yembele in the chat, and he's just created his own podcast, and he's sort of understanding now. And honestly, Tom, you know, I spoke to my wife and some of my nearest and dearest, and I sort of said to them, I think I'm going to chuck it in. Like, I think I've done as much as I could. Like, the shows are fantastic, and actually the loyal viewers will know. And I used to get lots of DMs about, you know, the frequency of shows. I went down to like 1 a week because I just didn't have the energy to do it. And then the summer kind of came around, and for some reason, I don't know what it was. Maybe it was the break from football. Maybe it was like the season ended. I thought, oh, I feel so much better. And now I decided, because there's no international football, certainly, well done the England and the 21s, but you know what I mean? There's no major tournament that I thought I need a release. I've got 2 young children. I've got a day job that absolutely kills me. And I need to talk and do something in the evenings that makes it quite fun. And I'm really well connected on socials, and that's not a humble brag, but I've been on the Twitter game for years.
You're an OG of the Arsenal Twitter space.
Yeah, I've been around for a few years, as you can tell. But I just thought, you know what, let's do a daily thing. And I cannot tell you, Tom, A, how enjoyable it's been again, and B, the kindness, the generosity of people giving up their time like you, the kindness of people in the chats. And it was one message that was the post that I sent on social media. One message. Every now and again, you get a message that just hits you deep. And this guy or gal wrote quite a long sort of few paragraphs about why he loves the channel and why he loves the community and why he enjoys my content. And it was just, mate, I just felt warm and fuzzy, and it gave me purpose again, and it gave me that motivation to be like, you know what, this is great. And honestly, Tom, I'm sure you get it. We get lots of DMs from people who say stuff like, you got me through some of my darkest times. You got me through some really, personal issues that I was going through, or challenges they're facing at work. Like, this is a release for them as it is for us. I know it's weird, and until you're in our shoes, chat, you'll never sort of experience that. And it's a shame, actually, because I feel really wholesome when I do. I mean, you must get that. You must get people that just say to you, Tom, you made such a difference, or your shows make such a difference to my life. I know it sounds really weird, chat.
No,
but you hear us say it, but we get it, right?
Yeah. People drop very nice DMs now and again that pop up in my Instagram requests or X requests, and it's reaffirming. And I always message saying, you have no idea what it, the impact messages like this can have, and it does help because at the end of the day, we are doing content around Arsenal, and being in a position where hundreds of thousands of people tune in to watch you talk about Arsenal is a very privileged thing to do. And that's never lost on us that it is a privileged thing to be in a position to be able to talk work in some cases, about Arsenal. So, and you just assume maybe from the outside that everything must be great. You got a dream job. How can you ever complain or moan about just covering Arsenal? That must be amazing, and it is. But it does come with, there is always two sides to something. But the messages are really reaffirming. And as I've messaged in my reply to you on Twitter, I said, it's just human nature that you focus in on the negative replies, sometimes more so than the positive ones. Like, the positive ones are amazing and brilliant, and you have to be honest, the ones that hit harder are the ones that are criticisms, because we're human and we don't deal well with criticism. So, for sure. When we just need to learn to be better at taking in the positive messages that you get that are more common.
Definitely. No, I really appreciate you asking me the question, man. And hopefully, for those of you that are watching, whatever challenges you guys are going through in your lives and whatever field of work you're in, if you're, if you have wobbles in confidence or morale or belief or just general attitude, just keep going, keep grafting. It's worth it, man, because there are really good people in the chat, as you can see. And Han of Arsenal, pure class, FK. Keep going, brother. Thank you. Really appreciate it. I think we are going to Jay Dime. That's so kind of you, man. Appreciate that. Appreciate all of you. We've had hundreds, maybe thousands of people tuning into today's show. Please do leave a like before you leave. If you're tuning in for the first time, check out the channel feed. Lots of really interesting content out there. And of course, within 24, 36 hours, these shows do go up to audio platforms like Spotify and Apple. Anybody wants to follow Tom, he's available at Tom Canton Media, but also the Gooner Talk TV, which is absolutely sensational. 65-ish thousand subs now. Doing amazing, mate. Amazing. Thanks, bits. Man. Daily show every morning. We're going to leave it there. So enjoy the warm day that is due to be ahead for those of us in London. Next couple of days are going to be 30 plus. Stay cool, stay hydrated. Enjoy what is to come over the next 24 hours. Who knows? Maybe we might make another signing tomorrow. So look after yourselves, and until tomorrow's show, it is bye for now.